Night.
Coming up on this episode, I let you know if long-awaited Xbox One exclusive Quantum Break is chronological or a massive waste of time travel. John looks at the wide quality spectrum of acting in games and ponders whether video games and TV should cross the streams.
I've been making people high-five their televisions for 2 years.
And these tragic victims of the Great Chrono War of 2023 discuss the complexities of time travel. That's all to come, and has already been on this chronologically challenged episode of Video Game Nation.
Who are you?
I'm you from half an hour in the future.
Oh.
I really wouldn't do that. There can't be a single person alive who hasn't dreamed of time travel, whether it's a desire to find out what really happened to the dinosaurs or simply to skip the agonizing wait for the next 2 Star Wars films. Everyone has fantasized about achieving the ultimate impossible. Quantum Break is a game about making that impossible a reality, as envisaged by someone on a budget. Any notions of witnessing the dawn of creation or encouraging Hitler to keep painting are swatted down in the opening exposition. In the spirit of films like Primer or Looper, it's a more grounded look at the implications of tampering with the delicate fabric of time. And when I say grounded, I mean you spend a lot of time in nondescript warehouses and construction yards shooting people in the face. Clearly devised when Microsoft misguidedly focused on Xbox One as an entertainment platform, Quantum Break is part game, part TV show. It's not entirely clear why, but as the first and quite possibly last attempt to merge the 2 media on one disc, it's a fascinating oddity. Sean Ashmore, best known as Iceman in the X-Men films, is Jack Joyce, an everyman gifted with special powers following a disastrous time travel experiment instigated by former best friend Paul Serene, played by The Wire and Game of Thrones' Aidan Gillen. They join a unique club of famous actors who've appeared in games over the years, many of whom have phoned it in, but some have delivered standout performances.
My favourite video game actor, and in fact my favourite actor, is Tim Curry. I think he's amazing. And he's particularly amazing in Red Alert 3, where he plays this sort of panto villain of a Russian general.
You are wrong.
Of course, my favourite, I guess, has to be Kevin Conroy in the Arkham games. Like, Mark Hamill's cool and he's great. He's the best Joker. There is no other Joker. But Kevin Conroy as Batman was that guy who did the Batman voice perfect. He was Bruce Wayne and then he was Batman. It was just like a little difference, do you know what I mean? He wasn't right in the middle of a hernia.
I think you just got to give Nolan North credit, haven't you? With Uncharted, Last of Us, even Creed, like Desmond Miles. No one wanted Desmond Miles to turn up in the games, but he's given a consistently strong performance. So yeah, it has to be Nolan North in any of the 6,000 parts that he's played.
Jack comes to terms with his miraculous time-manipulating abilities about as quickly as he realizes he's an efficient, remorseless killer, and sets about trying to unravel why his bestie has suddenly become a ruthless, murderous villain by shooting people in the face, of course. By now, it's becoming clear that Finnish studio Remedy has a formula. They take a genre, noir for Max Payne, horror for Alan Wake, and now sci-fi, apply a gimmick, bullet time, light as a weapon, and now time powers, and stitch it all into a competent third-person shooter. With each new concept comes a bigger budget and a graphical leap, but very little in the way of meaningful innovation. Quantum Break sadly doesn't break this cycle. Ultimately, it's a series of arena-style face shootings padded out by some rudimentary platforming and exploration. Fortunately, Remedy is very good at weaving its gimmick du jour into the gunplay. Although Quantum Break is ostensibly meant to be played as a cover shooter, Jack's gradually expanding arsenal of abilities means that cowering behind a wall is rarely a viable tactic. The earliest and best power he earns is to create localized time bubbles that freeze any enemies and bullets fired into them, allowing you to stack up a volley of gunfire that will hit the poor sap once the anomaly expires. Other powers like Time Vision, Time Dash, Time Shield and Time Blast are only tangentially related to time manipulation in that they all have the word time before them. They're undoubtedly fun to use and chain together for improvised facey shoots, but overall it feels like a missed opportunity, especially when you've got the likes of Braid, Prince of Persia and Xenoblade to draw inspiration from. This lack of imagination extends beyond combat too. Controlling the flow of time should open up some amazing puzzling opportunities, but Quantum Break spurns them at every opportunity. In pretty much every heavily signposted case, it's a matter of hitting the rewind button to reconstruct or deconstruct something that's blocking your path. Ultimately, what motivates you to keep going isn't the promise of more action, but rather the hope of unraveling its intriguing central mystery. In that regard, the live-action segments are actually pretty compelling. They're nicely shot, generally well acted, and make the most of what's clearly a limited budget, although it's hard not to view them through the prism of other live-action video game cutscenes rather than the TV it's striving to not so much imitate as be. The reality is that they sit somewhere between a Sci-Fi Channel series in terms of production values and your average Sky Atlantic import as far as talent goes. They're entertaining enough, but it's questionable whether they add anything of real worth to the story, at least anything that couldn't have been more efficiently explained through environmental storytelling.
I wish they'd stop trying to do this. Why are they trying to can't video games just stand alone? Why are you trying to shoehorn them into other mediums as if that justifies their existence? You know, it's ludicrous. Like, no one's trying to turn books into films, are they?
I think there was a TV show on Sci-Fi called Defiance, and they released like an MMORPG that was going to tie in with the game, and everyone was going to play it and watch it, and the players were going to affect how the events played out in the TV series, and I think all 7 people that played the game decided the show would get cancelled.
I think they need to kind of slow it down and make it a lot smaller. I mean, Xbox did it well with 1 versus 100 on the Xbox 360, where at a set day and a certain time, you could tune in and you can actually play the game live, and you can win prizes and stuff like that. Why not bring that back? Bring that back and extend that to mobile devices. Well, if you've got a mobile device and you're watching this particular show at this particular time, you can play and you can be in the game and you can win. Why not?
Do I think the TV game and transmedia stuff? Well, no, of course it can't. Of course it can't work. Who cares? Who ever watched a TV show and said, I wish that interacted with the game I'm playing? No one's ever done that. It's a waste of time. No, who has the time to care about that being a thing?
Quantum Break's biggest failing is that it's merely good when Xbox One is desperately in need of great, especially with Uncharted 4 on the horizon. Whatever Remedy does next, be it a sequel or something completely different, I can only hope that it sidesteps any transmedia pretensions in favour of a game with a little more meat on its bones. Right now though, you get a much better cover shooter and TV deal by picking up Vanquish and subscribing to Netflix. Now here's John to cast a critical eye over gaming's greatest and most diabolical acting performances.
Hello.
Hello, you. When voice acting is good, it can carry a whole game. Portal's GLaDOS was what happens when you give Siri the ability to kill. Delilah in Firewatch gave me a midlife crisis when I'm not even at midlife. And when it's bad, you'll find out why Link never ever spoke again.
Oh boy, I'm so hungry I could eat an Octorok.
Oh boy! No wonder they cut out his tongue. In the 80s and 90s, a good voice sample would lodge in your brain forever.
Rise from your grave.
Round 1. Fight.
The first voice I ever heard in a video game was the dying barbarians in Golden Axe on the Mega Drive. Have a listen to how we used to scream in 1989. Here's trivia. There's a rumour that those screams are sampled from the original Rambo movies, which is nice because there's another rumour which is that they're actually the sounds of death row inmates being executed, which is probably cheaper because you don't have to pay any royalties because there's nobody left to pay them to. But a voice sample is just a clip. Even the bloke from Mortal Kombat who used to pop up and say Toasty could be a playground legend just by existing. He was just the sound designer, but to get real acting, you need real actors. I don't mean the Hollywood actors who get brought in to add name value now that gaming's rolling in the sweet dollar like Scrooge McDuck out for a swim, because that doesn't always work. I've never bought a game because of who was in it. Kevin Spacey being in Call of Duty just reminded me to watch House of Cards. Ellen Page in Beyond Two Souls just reminded me the movie Juno existed. A film so good it could have been prevented by a condom. The most dangerous drive-by 50 Cent could organise would be him throwing unsold copies of his own game, and Peter Dinklage was just so tremendous in Destiny they completely replaced him in an update. Bad acting? It's like smoking or a mangled eye socket. You fix it with a patch. Shut up, everyone. I'll make a dad joke if I want it. Not even a dad. I mean the voice actors who've risen to the occasion as games got longer and longer, and acting roles got bigger and more complicated. Like Jennifer Hale and Mark Meer as Commander Shepard in the Mass Effect series.
Do or die isn't much of a choice, so I just keep doing whatever it takes.
And David Bateson as Agent 47. And Kevin Conroy, the only Batman who sounds like Batman, and Mark Hamill, who was hanging out as the Joker decades before Star Wars remembered he existed.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman!
Their performances are nuanced and human, and they've got to be interesting to listen to because you're going to be hanging out with them for about 30 hours. Maybe more than any other actors since the golden age of radio, game voice actors have to turn in a performance that's believable and, most importantly, sustainable. Good on these people. If I'm in a car for an hour with another person and I don't like the sound of their voice, I will crash that car just to escape the conversation. These people are doing entertainment a great service. And now that I've said something nice, here's some voice acting that's total pants. Get a load of this ridiculously keen elf from Gauntlet Legends on the N64.
I like food.
Don't ever let pro wrestlers do their own voices.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
And if the words resident and evil are in the title, here's a hint, don't let the zombies play the humans.
Barry! Where's Barry?
Well, I'm sorry, but he's probably...
No.
Game developers, remember voice acting is important because it's part of what makes your game world human.
This was a triumph.
And when it's bad, I just press the mute button. And now your game's as silent as Link always should have been.
Oh, goody!
I'd tell you to join us after the break, but I already know that you do. See you in 3.
Don't do time travel unless you know exactly how you're going to do time travel.
When you upgrade to Sky Movies.
I told you you'd be back. Now, Quantum Break is the latest in a string of games that have put the incredibly hazardous ability to mess around with time in the hugely irresponsible hands of players. We embarked on a Bill and Ted style quest to assemble history's greatest gaming experts to get their opinions on time travel. Sadly, none of them were willing to participate, so we just got the usual lot in instead.
Games are about play, aren't they, at the most sort of basic level? And the best ones for me are about playing with things that you can't play with in real life, either because it's too dangerous, like fast cars or war or whatever, or because it's not possible, like physics or time. So I think really they're the perfect medium to sort of explore what would happen, what would the world be like if we could change it in this way.
I think time travel is just a very cool way to sort of go back and correct mistakes rather than having to just redo a level again. It's quite fun. Do a visually nice looking thing and rewind and stuff like that. It's fun.
I think there's something fascinating about seeing a development, and also we're kind of fascinated by our own history. And so even if it's a fictionalized world and a fictionalized history, people are still interested in the sci-fi element to it, and there's the kind of whole, you know, if I do something here, will it impact, you know, later on, and elements like that. There's a lot to work with.
I think time travel is such a sort of popular mechanic in gaming because it's something that we're so eternally fascinated with as a human race. Like the idea of being able to go back in time is something that's continued to fascinate us. And it also makes gameplay so interesting. You know, look at something like Braid, which uses time travel and it creates these really complex, really intelligent puzzles. I think it's so clever that the way time travel can be used in video games, it opens things up to a whole different level.
No! I have no idea why time travel is such a popular mechanic in games, because people write it terribly. And then when you've got stuff like The Prince of Persia, Sands of Time was great, but calling it a time travel game, it was like, and then you had a rewind button, which was just different to restart. I don't like it. Don't do time travel unless you know exactly how you're going to do time travel. Like the Soul Reaper series, unless you're going to go back in time and kill yourself.
Well, time travel is popular in games for the same reason it's popular in other forms of entertainment. It's just fantasy wish fulfillment, isn't it? We can't actually travel through time, so games give us a way to get a taste of that. Same with Mario, you know, you can actually be a plumber.
My favourite time travel game is Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time from 2003, which was just a great game. And I loved what it did with sort of messing about with time. I loved the sort of acrobatics. I loved the inventive traps. And of course, the MC Hammer trousers.
It's not necessarily a time travel game, but my favourite bit of time travel in a game is a bit in Okami, the PS2 game. You don't realise you've gone back in time at first. You go back in time and you see your older self fighting a big boss that you've already fought. And there's just a brilliant bit of that where you're kind of realising what's going on and almost kind of and seeing your older self who is stronger than you are now and just kind of being like, oh, okay, I'm not at the end of the game then. I've still got a long way to go.
It has to be Life is Strange because I only just finished that lately. And wow, like the back and forth in that just like blew my mind a bit. Because I played it on Twitch and I was getting people to help me make the decisions on the chat. And there was one decision that got made that someone died in the game. And it was a big decision and it affected me, you know. Days after, I was starting blaming the chat. I was like, that weren't me, that was them, you know. They took ages to make a decision on that. So I just had to go on a whim. That was them. They called them to die. I'm not responsible for that.
I'll be safe if I can make it there.
Favourite time travel game is Ocarina of Time because it is the best game ever and you travel through time in it. Boxes ticked.
I'd really like a narrative-driven game where you are an explorer of the past, going back in time to sort of document things and figure out what really happened in the past and stuff like that. That'd be really cool. And then things could start going wrong and a little bit weird and the timelines get messed up and all sorts of fun stuff like that. Anyone can steal that idea because I'd like to play it, so please do. Time Man, I'd call it.
I would like to see sort of like an open world game, but like an open time game. So you could go like anywhere in history, like ancient Egypt or medieval England or whatever, and like mess about with stuff and then kind of go into the future and see how you've changed it. It's arguably possibly slightly beyond current technology to make a game where you could visit anywhere in human history, but you know, PlayStation 5, that'd be out soon, wouldn't it?
It's been done a little bit in some of the Assassin's Creed titles, but I would love to see a game that revolves around, like, I don't know, say a city or one place, and you go like in sections of time through that city, so you really see the changes and impact, say, of somewhere like London but it doesn't even have to be a real place. Even if you there's something really interesting about seeing a development and seeing kind of cycles and things like that. And Assassin's Creed has done it a little bit, kind of, I don't know, side missions or at the very end of games, but I would love to see a game that properly kind of has big chunks of sections in these different time periods.
Future games, I'd like to see time travel used in a way where I can play a video game to go back in time and stop Zack Snyder making movies. I'd like a video game where I could go back in time and not see Batman vs Superman in the cinema. I'd like all sorts of, there's so much, everybody, oh, go back in time and kill Hitler. It's like, no, go back in time and fix mundane things that you don't like. Do you know what I mean? Go back in time and find the guy who came up with the idea for micro scooters and kick him till he stops doing that and can't use micro scooters.
I'd like to see a game that, now they're taking a year off with Creed as well, I'd like to see maybe a title where it's the same place but all the way through time. You know, you've got Far Cry Primal now going back to 10,000 BC, so seeing something that goes from then all the way through to like near present day and showing, make the location the star of the game. I'd really like to see a game that fully realises that.
Quantum Break isn't the first game to dabble in TV, although personally I hope it's the last. But does our resident clown prince of gaming, John Robertson, agree? Let's find out.
Hello television friends, high def, high five. So, Quantum Break experiments with TV. So what? I've been making people high five their televisions for 2 years. Handprints on the plasma aside, Quantum Break's done an interesting thing. Make a choice in the game, it changes the 22-minute show, which changes the game again. Now, having the user mess with TV is an idea so old it's actually nice to see it back. It's been ruined by talent shows, but do you remember when sitcoms used to have audience votes? If you pick the one on the left, you will be very glad we don't actually broadcast in HD or 3D. But you don't see many attempts to fuse gaming with the mechanic of TV in a meaningful way. There are episodic games, but those are chapters in odysseys, and sure, every few years Hideo Kojima will remind us that TV is just a video game you can't play, mostly by stopping his games with a cutscene the length of a small war. But games either end up based on television shows or about the production of TV, and you only see non-mocapped actors as a kind of glorified screensaver between levels of Red Alert. As with most things, I blame the 1990s, just as something's only real now if it has a hashtag. If Mahatma Gandhi wanted to liberate India in this day and age, he'd better make certain he's got good Wi-Fi and a prepaid SIM. So during the Nintendo vs Sega console wars, did every single piece of pop culture get a video game? And probably shouldn't have. The medium was young and the technology wasn't up to it. Here's the neighbour's game. It's exactly like the show. Colourful, parochial, eye-wateringly terrible. The sitcom Home Improvement became a side-scrolling platformer. It doesn't matter, it made no sense. A game was the star of a thing you liked, jumping over things related to that thing. It's why Garfield got to have a platformer despite being a comic about a cat whose main feature was he didn't move very much. The game show Jeopardy became Jeopardy, the game. And Star Trek The Next Generation went from being a show about aliens with lumpy foreheads to being a game where everyone had a lumpy forehead because 16-bit graphics couldn't properly capture the magnificence of Patrick Stewart's mum-pleasing skull. But these last two were attempts to replicate the feel of existing TV franchises. If you actually wanted to alter the content of a cutscene, well, you had to play one of the much derided at the time and totally forgotten now interactive movies that so infested the PC and Sega CD. This is Night Trap, which is one of the two games that started off the move to give games a classification system. In it, you try to stop some college girls from being murdered, but it's so cheesy you probably won't try very hard. And this is Star Trek Borg, which was pretty much the only well-reviewed interactive movie of the decade, mostly because it was surprisingly playable, and when you died, a godlike being would make cutting remarks about you. And gamers have an endless appetite for that. Self-esteem problems? Oh, we don't have time. When you move away from TV franchises, gaming's relationship with television is pretty much just, oh, we've got a level set in a studio. Backyard Wrestling Don't Try This at Home destroyed a talk show, and Rayman Raving Rabbids TV was a party game about rabbits that run a TV station, advertised as the only video game you can control with your butt. Which is either just silly or a bigger insight into how the TV industry works than I care to understand. But here we are in a so-called golden age of televised drama, with the technology to back up just about any gaming idea you'd care to have. We've all been the victim of a dialogue tree that turns out to be a cunningly disguised bonsai, or played cinematic games where what you pick doesn't match up with the result at all, or played Defiance. What a good idea! What a terrible game! But if we can make games that can seamlessly affect how a proper show plays out, and that can in turn feed into the gameplay, well, that's a thrill. Not just because of the replayability, not just because having a game's ending play out exactly as it should directly because of your actions would be tremendous, but because there'll always be out-of-work actors, and we would love you to give us something to do. Now. That's how I got this job.
And that, ironically, is all the time we have left for this episode. But there's always time to stay in touch with us via the magic of social media, either on the official Video Game Nation Facebook page or on Twitter using the hashtag VGN. See you next week. Right, I better head back to the future. Bye!
No, but you haven't told me what happens. You haven't told me.
Coming up on this episode, I let you know if long-awaited Xbox One exclusive Quantum Break is Have you ever had deja vu?
If you fancy something a bit more athletic in your life, to watch obviously, I'm not suggesting you start jigging around, then there's Ninja Warrior on Challenge at 7:30 tonight.